to get started right into today's talk, transforming schools and how schools and universities communicate, building a future-ready foundation with GoTo Connect. And we're going to kick things off with a little poll here. So you will see the poll pop up on your screen in just a moment. And we're just looking to find out, what's your biggest communication challenge at your school, district, university right now? I'll leave this on for a few moments. We have managing too many disconnected systems, budget constraints and unpredictable costs, emergency preparedness and safety gaps, and lack of IT resources to maintain systems. Great, see some answers coming in here. Leave that up for a few more seconds. Alrighty, looking like lack of IT resources was a strong one in that poll, which I know is very, very common. So diving right into introductions for today's session, I will pass it over to Lucia, one of our fabulous speakers, to kick us off for intros.
Hi everybody, I'm Lucia Harding. I work on the product marketing team here in GoTo. I work across GoTo Connect and GoTo Webinar, and I work obviously in the education space. So I'm super excited to be here today to bring you through all our insights and learnings around education. And we are joined by two great people, Kurt and Adam, and I'm going to pass you over to Kurt next to introduce himself.
Thank you, Lucia. Kurt Snodgrass. I'm a senior solutions consultant for public sector, and I've spent over 25 years in state government and higher ed here in the state of Oklahoma. And I look forward to having a discussion with you today. Adam?
Thanks, Kurt. Adam Peeler, Senior Director of GoTo Connect, coming at you from Salt Lake City, Utah. I've been 12 years in education software, deployments, phones, conference rooms, all the fun stuff.
All the good stuff, Adam. Yeah, listen, we're very excited to be here today, and I'm going to now bring you through our agenda for today. So for today and the webinar, what we're actually going to go through is some internal insights and learnings that we know from the education space, but we also wanted to kind of bring that broader afield. So a couple of weeks ago, we actually ran a report with Metrigy, which brought back some really great insights and great data from the whole education vertical industry. So today we'll actually be taking you through both the internal learnings and the external learnings that we got from Metrigy. So just to kind of bring you through what the agenda is going to look like then is, first of all, we're looking at the growing demand for communications. Then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into budget, safety and compliance. And then we're going to bring it all together with what are the steps to building a solid foundation. And then we're going to end it with a Q&A session. So we can jump straight into the first part, which is the growing demand for communications. And if you just want to pop on to the next slide. So as I said, we ran a report with Metrigy and it was really interesting. So this went out across the whole education vertical sector. And what we did was we just wanted to say, right, let's get a sense check on what like UCAS looks like within the industry and see what's happening. And astoundingly, what came back is that 62.5% of the education industry from the Metrigy report actually came back to say, yes, we're really interested, we're looking to move to a UCAS platform. And a further 29% were like, we're really interested, UCAS, hybrid, we have legacy systems, but moving towards a UCAS focus is top of mind. Now, I thought this was really interesting, especially in the report, compared to, you know, other sectors were also included just as like a comparison. And in the other sectors, only 50.4% from those other sectors were actually looking at moving to UCAS. So education is leading the way. And I suppose when you kind of take a step back from this and you look at it, you say, well, it's probably not too much of a surprise that this is the new reality for education since COVID, because COVID came and we had to move to a remote world so fast, and it really accelerated remote learning and made it so critical that the classroom was everywhere to keep students, parents, and teachers connected at all times. So I think the importance of that has really embraced this shift towards education. And interestingly as well, within the report, you know, things like enhancing the student experience now with flexible on-demand learning from anywhere is top of mind. Improving campus safety with reliable instant communication is top of mind. And then boosting that operational efficiency and around managing tight budgets as well is kind of top of mind and focus within the education industry in this move towards UCAS. One more thing that was really interesting that actually came out of the Metrigy report was that, yes, UCAS is a focus, but the goal wasn't just to get technology. The goal was actually to say, no, we want to find the right partner, we want to build the right foundation, and we want to build the right infrastructure. We have needs and requirements that are quite complex when it comes to education, and we want to ensure that we kind of find that right partnership. And I thought that was interesting because it just showcases that the mindset within the education sector is so much more than just getting the communications. It's actually building that foundation. So I've done a lot of talking there. So Adam and Kurt, I'm going to open it up to you. And Adam, I know that topic around like building a strong foundation is very important. Do you want to just talk more about that and like kind of the importance of what like building a strong infrastructure actually means? Because I think it's very easy when you see it in the report, but what does that actually mean in terms of UCAS and that education?
And landing UCAS, Unified Communications as a Service, is kind of the grown-up version of voice over IP meets meetings, meets messaging, meets SMS, meets his community engagement. It's a bit of how much more can that phone that used to just sit on the desk, how much more can it do for you? Where it's not just facilities and cabling, it's actually core to your communication and safety strategy. So I'm always a little bit surprised on how low the numbers are, but it kind of makes sense. Kurt can maybe add some additional stats, what he's seen, but 5-10 years ago, maybe the quality wasn't as good, reliability wasn't as good. So the industry and modern UCAS providers have really worked on, making sure that it's not just cheaper, it's cost effective because you can consolidate, but more it's better quality, it has more uptime, it has more failover options. But it's really about that foundation empowering the end results. And what are the end results is having your front desk able to better engage with the community, where people aren't just waiting on hold or no one's answering or all calls are going to voicemail. It's about teachers and professors being able to interact with parents and teachers on phone numbers and communication channels owned by the school district or the university college system. No longer calling over personal cell phone numbers, where now you can't audit and track what happened or be compliant. So all these things lay that foundation of making sure communication happens over your approved systems, have granular permissions, are reliable, scalable, sound good, and then again your IT staff not having to physically drive to the closets and the classrooms to touch the piece of hardware that isn't working. That's huge for modern UCAS. Kurt, I kind of touched a little bit, but what have you seen in something similar?
Very, very similar, Adam. When I came to the company in 2014, very few inquiries or RFPs were coming out specific to voice over IP or UCAS. And I'll have to admit, I converted to voice over IP when I was vice chancellor for telecommunications here in Oklahoma back in 2000. And a lot of my colleagues thought I was a heretic for migrating to a different solution other than a hardware-based rack and stack voice system. But over the past few years, I manage all of our public sector contracts and RFPs. And in recent years, I've seen, I would say almost all have some UCAS component, if not totally UCAS. And, early on, people were, like Adam mentioned, were kind of hesitant to migrate to a UCAS or VoIP solution due to performance, technology considerations, and things of that nature. But obviously, choosing the right partner in a UCAS solution is paramount in terms of features and functionality. They have to be robust as well as cost effective. And hopefully you'll find that solution with GoTo.
Yeah, Definitely. And I think it's interesting as well because it does just keep coming up in the report around the complexity and choosing that right partner and somebody that understands your needs. So it actually brings us on to the next slide, which is interesting. And this actually kind of comes from a lot of learnings from the GoTo side and dealing with education and just understanding the market. But it's around those communication hurdles that the education sector face when looking at adopting a UCAS system. So the first one is fragmented and outdated systems, relying on a mix of legacy phone systems and separate apps that don't work together, budget constraints facing unpredictable pricing and rising operational costs with limited funds, security and safety gaps, lacking emergency communication features and struggling to protect sensitive data, lack of centralized management, managing different systems across multiple locations, which you touched on, Adam. It just places such a heavy burden on stretched IT teams. And then barriers to communication, you know, complexity in implementation, poor support, and a difficult user experience are major barriers to adoption. And I think, you know, it's very important to understand those kind of complexities, I think, when it comes to that buyer in education. And Adam, I know for sure, like outdated legacy systems, central management, fragmented tools comes up again and again, and they're pain points you're definitely aware of when it comes to the education space. But is there anything you'd like to share on kind of these topics and what we see that the education industry face?
It makes sense. Every year the complexity grows and the needs grow, right? We have more tools to communicate than ever, and we still don't communicate effectively. So you got to add another tool and add another tool. So it becomes fragmented and it quickly becomes outdated. But I spent the early portion of my career placing phones in classrooms, you know, sleeping in portables, sleeping in auditoriums at 3 a.m. because the phone numbers would port over at 9 a.m. the next day. So we'd get all the phones placed and all the keys programmed. And so really where we want to focus on is when we bring fragmented, outdated, and centralized management and, you know, barriers to adoption all together in a kind of singular use case is what the cloud brings, you know, in cloud communications is the ability to do this from anywhere. Technically, you know, if I told 10 years ago me that I could now program a phone from Boston that's being deployed in California, I'd be like, that's crazy. But, you know, that's, you know, nowadays you can program all the keys, give it all the profiles, reboot it, reset it, you know, resync it, you know, give it all its provisioning URLs all from anywhere. And so the fragmentation gets a little bit easier when you get that centralized management. So I think a lot of these things come together in addition to, you know, helping with your budget because it's single vendor versus multi-vendor.
And that's actually, when you actually say it out loud, that's really transformative when you think about it, from like sleeping basically on site to being in Boston and being able to do all that. Like, that's a massive transformation. When you actually think about it and you say it in that context. Kurt, I know you're definitely out chatting to people, especially in the education space as well. Is there any hurdles that kind of stand out to you, maybe around the budget area or anything else that you'd like to maybe touch on?
Yeah, being on the purchasing contracting side, you know, the number of hurdles facing schools and campuses, you know, budgets are obviously kind of the starting point of integrating new technologies and platforms, because you have to have the money in the budget to even move forward. And in addition to the budget, having the budget in place, public schools, you know, universities, colleges all have statutory obligations that they must follow in terms of the purchasing process. And we try to be very mindful of that and, you know, understand that, you know, that is, you know, something that can't be looked, you know, you can't look against it. I mean, you have statutory rules, purchasing rules, and, you know, schools obviously have oftentimes, or most of the time, limits on how much they can spend until they have to go out to a request for a proposal. And depending on the staff internally, they may not have the skill set to develop an RFP and to put it out and to evaluate. And many of our customers have had to rely on third parties or consultants to develop those RFPs, and those are expensive. And one thing that we've tried to do as a company is, in my role, is to get cooperative contracts, national and state cooperative contracts in place to help facilitate the purchase. Not only to facilitate the purchase, but also meet the statutory obligations that schools have for purchasing, to try to give a full suite of purchasing options to move forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Kurt. And I think that kind of comes back as well to picking that right partner, do you know, which definitely came up in the report, but like around those kind of budget constraints and those elements, you need a partner that understands that and can go deep and have those conversations.
Indeed.
And I think that is vitally important, especially in the education space. And it's actually a nice segue into the next slide, which brings us back to our Metrigy report. And this is like, you know, the top 5 criteria for evaluating UCAS for education, which came from the report. But I think your point really highlights, you know, the importance of having people that are really aware of the education sector when they're your partner, that they fill in the gaps, because I can only imagine from an education perspective as a buyer, you can't fully know everything, and you really need that right provider who can bring you through that. So really good point. But I digress. I'll go back to this. So this did come up as the top 5 criteria for evaluating UCAS for education from Metrigy, which is also interesting because it also kind of, it speaks to some of the pain points that we've come across and we've seen within the market ourselves. So the top 5 criteria is 1, reliability, 2, security, 3, end user ease of use, 4, voice quality, and 5, budget predictability. Adam, I'm sure it's no surprise to see reliability and ease of use at the top of that list. Why do you think things like reliability and ease of use just come up time and time again? And like, even from like, I know we touched on it earlier, but like from that kind of transformational perspective of what UCAS means as well, like what do you think, why do you think this is important for educational institutes?
Yeah, it's nice to see education is a little bit more grounded in reality about what actually matters, right? Because you're budget constrained, you're not, you know, chasing revenue as an example. But
Right.
reliability and easy use tend to be a little bit more catch-alls for any software, but it's still important, right? I like to, so no surprise, but I do like to think about, you know, what's the actionability on some of these things. When I talk to customers in other verticals, say things like, you know, features and price. Give me these features and give me it at this price. But when we ask questions like, you know, tell me about why you're firing your current vendor, it's like, well, too many outages, voice quality wasn't good, you know. So it's kind of back to that basic is, you know, reliability, voice quality are really that kind of foundation. But with modern software is where ease of use really comes from. Our power users that are doing hotkeys and shifted transfers and holds, you know, they're in another world. But everyone else like me kind of likes a point and click. You know, I grew up post command prompt. You know, so even my elementary school had Mac computers. So I've always been more of a GUI type of person. So I always appreciate the point and click. But I think ease of use encapsulate the more important part about, does the software actually change the day-to-day of my life? And is it being forced on me, or is it actually a benefit to me? For example, teachers, they have one of the hardest jobs out there. You know, they're expected to engage with parents, and professors are expected to engage outside of classrooms. They have 40 plus kids in K through 12 and 400 kids in auditoriums for universities. And so coming back to, you know, the ability to communicate with the community on the phone lines that are owned by the university or the school, you know, that gives them the opportunity to hold virtual classrooms. You know, that way you're never sick. You know, you can always log on, or teachers can always record their presentations, and they can use that for additional certifications or to put on their personal share site about different lesson plans. There's a lot of cool things that you can do with thinking about not just the phone system, but the phone meeting messaging as a singular thing. But again, most importantly is when things do go wrong, you know, what do you do when you have fragmented, you know, it's all cloud-based communication. So there's always going to be some AWS outage or some kind of something. So is there failover? Is there automatic rollover on things? Do you have a single vendor to call, message, chat? Do you have a single place to go audit what happened? We like to use the use case of I'm being sued, now what? Okay, well, with GoTo, you pop in, search, filter, find, get the recording, hand it over. We want to remove the Sherlock Holmes for telco from the finding and say, go here, do this, you got it.
Really interesting, yeah. And I used to work in telco, so yeah, good reference to Sherlock Holmes. Kurt, is there anything that you'd like to add on this? Probably maybe around budget predictability, or is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll keep banging the budget drum here. The one most intriguing thing that I've come across dealing, having discussions with our educational institutions is the fixed price over the term of the contract. They almost think it's too good to be true, that we're not going to each year increase their maintenance cost or support costs. And that seems to be one of the most intriguing things to educational institutions, that they can plan over a 3-5 year period and know that budget's going to be the same. Now, they can add and reduce licenses, but that's their decision. We're not going to increase pricing, each year, for whatever purpose. And then ease of use, my wife worked in public education for over 20 years, and she carried 2 phones. And one was a personal phone, one was a work phone. And she had to keep track of them. The school had to buy the hardware for her, the handset, and then had to pay for the monthly service. And the beauty of the GoTo platform, us as a provider and a partner, we can put a mobile application on the phone that they can use and be anonymous in terms of their personal cell phone. It would be their work number. So it increases efficiencies, it saves money, and I think all in all, just makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it is actually, it's a great point to bring up. It's something as simple as adding the app and having it like super secure and not having to carry around the 2 phones. Like those day-to-day practicalities.
Well, and Lucia, I'll say under our cooperative agreements, the mobile app doesn't cost anything. It comes with the license. So yeah. I'll just mention that.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, really good point. Brilliant. Well, I think that kind of brings us on to the next part then, which is where we kind of are going to go a little bit deeper into budget safety and compliance. Now, this came from Metrigy in terms of budget constraints and 4 ways UCAS solves for it. And I actually have to say, I love this. I think it really captures everything. And even to what you said earlier, Adam, about people being like, what's the price? UCAS gives so much more value than just a single line item on a quote. And I think this actually brings it together really well. So firstly, from the shift from CapEx to OpEx, you're no more expensive hardware purchases. You get the predictable monthly subscription instead of large upfront costs for PBX systems, servers, equipment. That leads to predictable budgeting and easier cash flow management. And no massive funding requests or multi-year capital approvals. 2, you eliminate maintenance and upgrade costs. Your UCAS system handles all hardware maintenance, software upgrades, patches, security updates. Your IT team is free to focus on strategic initiatives. This dramatically reduces operational expenses, lower IT staff costing, and no more keeping the lights on, or as Adam said, driving to 150 different buildings. You scale on demand. You can add or remove users as you need, pay only for what you actually are using, not for the infrastructure sitting idle during summer breaks or peak periods. You can actually customize it to what you need. And then the last one is reduce redundancy and vendor sprawl. So you can consolidate voice, video, messaging, emergency communication into one platform. No more juggling between contracts, billing cycles, all that stuff. You've got a lower cost of ownership. You've one partner, one bill, and one platform to manage. I just think this really showcases the benefit of UCAS and that you're actually building a really strong infrastructure, a really strong foundation that is going to pay year after year after year. And I love this slide, and I know I'm probably hyping it up a bit much, but it really showcases that infrastructure and how this will actually transform, an education institute into the future, and future-proof it as well. So I have to say, it just really captures everything really well. This did come from Metrigy. And Adam, I know this slide, it does highlight like how UCAS addresses those budget constraints in education. But from your perspective on this slide, what impact do you think this has on educational institutes? Like from the infrastructure perspective, I see, but what do you think from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of vendors that tend to string together a couple solutions and call it unified, which has its place. If there's something that you don't do well and someone else does it well, then and you can offer it at a lower price as a bundle, it's fantastic. But some of these things to actually match the budget, but provide value, right? We're not trying to decrease the number of services. We're trying to increase the number of services within the budget. That's where the true power comes from. So that single vendor that can do all these things is important. But really, when we talk about transformation, these are the things that future-proof you into a world where artificial intelligence is handling a large portion of conversations, right? So if you think about when you string together different communications, if you do have an AI that's available to answer questions or route phone calls by context, it's hard to do when it has to make jumps. And so automating some portion of the journey while also increasing community satisfaction requires these things to kind of be in that single platform, that single communication stack. So using a couple examples, modern large language models and conversational AI is able to take inbound phone calls to the IT team, transcribe it, information capture it, email it to them. An email can be automatically intaked into their ticketing system, and now they can wind up with a list of tickets that used to be a phone call. And so now you can not just handle the phone call, but you can also have your IT ticketing intake fully automated and still up. And then low level FAQ, like which floor is the printer on, or what are hours of the cafeteria? These are all things that you don't need to call me, but a large portion of people are going to call to ask about. So you can automate a lot of those things. Increasingly harder and harder if you don't have a unified communications that pulls all these things together in a single communication stack.
Yeah, really, really interesting. And I love that AI example because and I think as well, it really showcases, as you say, like it makes it so much easier to get into that AI world versus, God, without this kind of infrastructure, it is a reach. It's a serious reach to get into that AI world.
Not only is it scary, it's unwieldy, unmanageable, right? If you have multiple permission sets, if you have different security protocols and different vendors that do different internal security policies, most of the time you're just going to shut down and just say, like, if I can't trust it, it ain't for me. And so that's where that single stack comes in is, trust it. What you see is what you get. Know what it can do. Single vendor.
Yeah, exactly. And it really
avoids the who's on first, what's on second, I don't know who's on third when you have a problem. When your system goes down, you point at someone who it's not our problem, it's their problem. So that is a very valid point.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And this is all before AI takes over as well. So we have to remember that.
Good point. Yeah.
So yeah, look, I'll move on to the next slide as well. So mute myself. So school safety and emergency preparedness is critical in education, and it's critical in UCAS as well. So there is 3 key US regulatory requirements: Carrie's Law, direct 911 without prefix or access code, notification of 911 calls to central site, along with provision of valid callback number. Compliance date for new installs was February 17, 2020. Bombs Act must provide dispatchable location to PSAP and on-site personnel for any 911 call. Compliance dates January 6, 2021 for fixed MLTS, fixed VoIP services, and and January 6, 2022 for non-fixed services. And state mandate is Alyssa's law, created to improve school safety, requiring public, elementary and secondary schools to be equipped with silent panic alarms that are directly linked to law enforcement. The goal is to eliminate delays that could occur with calling 911. Current law in 10 states and under consideration in 20 more. Obviously, priority, very important. And Adam, I know you understand the gravity and the importance of having school safety and emergency preparedness. Is there anything that you would like to share or kind of give an oversight on this from your perspective?
Yeah, it'll be interesting as Alyssa's law makes its way through more states, or if it ends up being federally mandated. The previous two have been out for a bit, and most platforms have kind of molded their communications around it. But it's really cool in some sense that when you have a forcing mechanism, everyone's going to behave in a similar way, so you don't have to worry about it. But the risk of getting it wrong is life and death, and so it's definitely something to not take widely. In addition to, maybe fines or lawsuits. But the encapsulation of everything here is essentially we want to make 911 accessible and easy, and we want to make it dynamic. People move around, things happen, situation changes. And so I think we have another slide that kind of goes into it more, but being able to make sure that you're prepared and able to react, super critical.
Exactly. Yeah, we do go into a little bit more detail, but yes, thank you for that oversight, Adam. As it's critically important. Kurt, I'm not sure if you have anything you'd like to add from your side on this, or.
Not really. I think Adam did a great job.
Yeah.
Obviously, for GoTo, safety and security of our customers, students, faculty, and staff are paramount.
Yeah.
And I think we as a company, as a partner, have done a great job in working on applications and integrations into our platform that schools can take advantage of to provide the necessary security protocols for the people they need to protect.
Yeah, 100%. And they really have. GoTo has. We'll move on to the next slide because there's an interesting insight that came out from Metrigy in this. So, school safety and emergency preparedness is critical and of utmost importance. However, in the report, it actually came back to say that only 55% were compliant with both Kerry's Law and Ray-Baum's Act. I have to say, I found that really interesting, and we don't know the exact reason as to why, but it could be a knowledge gap. It could be by not having the right partnership or the right vendor with the UCAS. We don't know the reason, but I did find that really interesting. I know risks of non-compliance, safety, there's human safety in there as well. There's risks of inability to respond to an emergency quickly. Regulatory environment, there is fines of up to 10,000 per day for Kerry's Law, and there is fines for Ray-Baum's, and civil liability, lawsuits and reputational harm. Adam, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that number, the 55%, and just in general, what you think of that. Does that surprise you, or?
Yeah, this one was surprising to me. Similar as the adopting UCAS one, but this one ×2, because some of these things have been out for 5+ years, and just again the risk of getting it wrong is so high. 5 years ago we started on that track of making sure that whenever you call 911, the appropriate people are notified and the right room level information is passed over to the public service answering point. So it's a little bit worrisome. I'm sure there's some misunderstanding about what it is, depending on who's but most modern UCAS providers, when we do our surveys, most are fully or partially compliant, because one, we have to be, but the risk of getting it wrong is so high. So I would venture to say that number is probably a lot higher, but it is shocking to see something so low.
Yeah, Adam, I think it could come down to budget and funding. If you don't have the funding to put the tools in place, that could be why some of these educational institutions haven't deployed.
That's a really good point, Kurt. Yeah, it could come down to funding as well. Yeah, really interesting. Okay, we will move on to the next slide, just because we're going to go into a little bit more detail about campus safety, what it means, what it looks like. because between budget and there could be a gap in knowledge as well. Definitely, if the UCAS provider isn't sharing the information and letting people know what they need to be prepared with, there definitely could be a gap. So just in terms of campus safety suite integrations, what does that look like? It's instant emergency alerts, direct 911 dialing, and dedicated panic buttons ensure help is called immediately. Internal alerts notifies on-site security and admin via text, email, pop-ups, and paging. The instant 911 is dialed. Dynamic location tracking automatically provides a dispatchable location for first responders, even for mobile and soft phone. Real-time coordination, automated conference bridging allows staff to monitor the call and coordinate the on-site response. And advanced response data, NG 911, future ready support to share rich data like video feeds and floor plans with first responders. So I think this gives a really good overview what campus safety suite and integrations looks like. And I work on the education space. I understand a good bit of it. But Adam, I think this is the difference when it comes to getting the right provider and a real deep understanding of UCAS. And I mean this in the best way, but what does this actually mean for the end user in education?
Yeah, it's always, starting where, someone might be coming from. If we're still dialing out over copper lines or, PRIs and stuff, then it would make sense that, as you move from analog to digital, that some of the stuff, you could even imagine doing. But that's some of the benefits of being digital and cloud-based is that you can marry up disparate information in real time, right? So this kind of encapsulates, we want to make dialing 911 simple. We want it to be down to the room level. We want to make sure that site captains are notified as quick as possible and can listen in. We want to make sure that every room has the opportunity to call 911, even if cell signal is low. One thing I hear all the time is like, well, everyone has cell phones. It's like, well, not in the basement of room B, do they? So making sure everyone to call 911. And then, of course, one of the most important thing that most folks miss is the ability to test it and prepare ahead of time. I'd say even our customers, 6+ years ago, when you called 911, you really didn't know what happened. You don't know what information got passed over to the answering points. So the ability to test call a 911 call and see those notifications and actually kick off, but also see with a what you see is what you get, exactly what address is configured to what and what room is configured to what device. Again, I'm come from the millennial GUI side, so if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. Don't ask me to do any command prompts. So that's kind of the encapsulation here. And we partner with some really cool platforms like Stop It, Catapult, and Single Wire, where when you want that 911 plus, when you want to map out floors, when you want to mass notify a group of folks, when you want badge level, teacher level panic buttons versus room level panic buttons, these great providers provide kind of that on steroids aspect of calling 911. But the platform itself should at least handle the easy accessibility, every room, and the passover information to the site captains and the first responders.
Yeah. That's a really good overview, I have to say, Adam. And I think as well, it's that insight and knowledge share that's so critical, I think, to the end buyer in education to understand that, because it's not straightforward. Well, I definitely don't think it's straightforward. And you need that expert advice and to have that trust in the person that you're speaking to bring you through that. So thank you for that, because that definitely, it does really add such great detail and insight. Adam, you definitely covered a lot there. I don't know, Kurt, is there anything else you'd like to add here?
No, I think Adam did a great job in describing it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Adam, because that really, it just really brings it all together and showcases it. So moving on to the next point, so this is another some interesting stats that actually just came up. Another interesting stats to surprise me as well. So in terms of keeping ahead on security and data compliance, unauthorized UCAS access threatens organizations, educational institutions as well, and common attacks include voice phishing, social engineering, eavesdropping. But yet many organizations lack adequate security strategies, particularly around data compliance. In this day and age, I would just assume that most people are aware that you have to be data compliant. There's so much going on. I know AI has opened up a whole different world on it. However, in the Metrigy report in the education space, 20.5% of all organizations studied reported having a collaboration security incident in 2024, which is really quite high. 30% reported blocking access to collaboration apps over security and compliance concerns, which I would think is quite low, especially in this day and age. And only 34.7% use a third-party security and or compliance management platform. So I think this is really interesting. And I think this might come back. I know I keep harping on about having the right partner and getting you informed when you're choosing your UCAS platform, but it just kept coming up in the report. So it does mirror that way. But I think it's interesting because I would wonder how many end users actually just assume that this is involved and they haven't got the right partner who's actually guiding them and explaining, what the security measures are in place, how important this is. That's kind of, being almost like their mom and dad in the situation and looking after them from that perspective, from the UCAS system. I know, like Adam, definitely, I know if there's something you could add in this, because there's definitely examples, I'm sure, where people don't realize what's built into a UCAS system and how this mitigates against it, especially with the data, especially with UCAS systems, and just what kind of security measures are in place that people might not be aware of, or maybe other providers aren't providing.
Yeah, I mean, these numbers are quite low, which is, I think, a testament to modern IT teams and modern IT software being able to do kind of so much more monitoring and capturing. I think after and during the pandemic, most folks were kind of forced into a virtual collaboration space one way or another. So I think 30% probably used to be a lot higher, and 20% probably used to be a lot higher as well. So I think those numbers have come down substantially. So security is a little bit open topic from a UCAS perspective, because it's only kind of one portion of the journey. Our IT teams own the network infrastructure and the ins and the outs, and I don't think I've ever seen an IT team have to handle more complex routing than school IT teams. From building to building to central district to not central district, some of the most complex routing rules there are. So, but really, what security controls are there, you'll see most modern UCAS have, say, a SOC 2 type of security compliance, which is really important because it's the first level of what can internal employees and developers do with my data and systems, in addition to what can my employees do with it. So it's really important to have those set compliance for security that says, here's how we handle change management, who has an access controls and all that. So, SOC 2 is kind of your standard there. But also, internal and, social engineering aspect of it is, not sharing passwords and making sure that everyone has their own identities and making sure that you have granular permissions, who's a manager of who and who has access to what. With that 30%, we see a lot of folks turning off access to virtual meetings like this because they don't want to have folks jumping in during the classroom. But now controls like locking or setting attendance restrictions and stuff, you can kind of lock down what one of these looks like. And then recording a phone call, now you can lock down who has access to that recording, that transcript. And so you can simply say, instead of not recording it because I can't control who has access to it, I want to record it, I want to transcribe it, I want AI to summarize it so I don't have to go listen to a 2-hour phone call. But now I know exactly who has access and control over that.
Really interesting. And a lot of them are just built in, but it's almost like the security hygiene of it as well, and just being aware of that and aware of all those features. And that kind of comes back to having the right person at the end of the phone who's telling you about that. Really, really interesting. Kurt?
Yeah, and Adam, you can probably attest, with all the new nefarious tools and applications coming out in terms of phishing and malware, AI is going to play a part in some of this at one point. And, the poor IT teams, it's like squeezing Jello. When they try to stop it, it goes out both ends. I mean, so there's a lot of work that educational institutions have to go through to protect their student data and their other information.
Yeah, it used to be like the last frontier was voice, that if I call you, you know that I'm calling you. But, nowadays you can have AI mimic a voice. So it's definitely
Yeah.
forefront on, rules like stir shaken, is that phone number registered to the person that's actually calling me, who says they're calling me? Are there digital fingerprint reasons why I believe that this is actually Adam and not just voice AI Adam? So
Right.
it's an important category for sure.
It's kind of scary as well when you actually think about it. It's getting what's that book, 1984? Kind of, yeah. But yeah, it is a bit, it spooks me out a little bit. Okay, I think we'll move on to the last section then, which is steps to building a solid foundation. So I just wanted to pull together kind of like an overview of what a solid foundation looks like, and kind of what transformation looks like in education, and future-proofing your education system, what that looks like. As we've said time and time again, it's about getting that right partner and starting with the right foundation. So as it came up in Metrigy, and it's definitely come up in conversations, it's choosing a partner, not just a product, because that long-term partnership with your provider who understands your educational institute and can also share nuggets of information and tell you how to use the tools properly will make the difference in building that right infrastructure and building the right foundation. As well as that, they'll also understand how to actually build a bridge from legacy to modern. So a true partnership will integrate with your existing systems and help you migrate at your own pace. And that does make a difference, especially in education with legacy systems. And you're securing a foundation that lasts. So you're avoiding any costly rip and replace. You're actually working with a partnership who understands you and wants to build flexibility and grow with you. The second one for kind of building this strong foundation and a really strong infrastructure is strong operations. So it's a system really is only as good as its ability to manage it. And the right UCaaS platform doesn't just work, it actually is aimed to make your team's life easier every single day. And as Adam says, if you're going across to 50 buildings, you need something that is going to be easy to manage, easy operations. And that's where something like a centralized management system for user settings and features across all campuses makes such a difference for your IT team. And when we go back to building a strong foundation, a strong infrastructure, that is the game changer for your operations in terms of building that. And then in terms of staying ahead and future proofing, well, by building that right foundation, getting the right operations in set, you're future proofing your investment going into the future, because you're delivering value year after year. You're not locked into aging technology. You're positioned to move forward. So you're getting regular feature updates and innovation as they come out. You've got cloud native architecture that evolves with your hardware upgrades, and you've got a dedicated education support and that partnership that will be with you there in the future. So the main thing is you're not building just for today. You are building for 10 years time. You are actually transforming your educational institution into the future. So it's a full infrastructure change in building that right foundation. Adam, I'm going to open it up to you. I know building the right foundation infrastructure as the basis is the basis to the future and transforming educations. But is there anything else that you'd like to add on this slide?
Yeah, I mean, kind of a point for each of them. Starting with the foundation, again, the right partner. I'm always surprised on how many, UCaaS vendors are simply licensing another PBX software under the only putting their software on top of it. That's what makes connecting from legacy to modern even more difficult. One of the things at GoToConnect we value is we have automated provisioning with over 1,000 different types of devices, and we can manually provision any device. So it's completely extensible about grabbing an analog to digital adapter, giving it an extension, throwing it in the system all within 5 minutes. And now you can make your legacy Bell systems and loudspeakers from 1995 work over your digital system, within really quickly. So a lot of these kind of software on top of relicense platforms, make that a little bit difficult. So that's part of choosing the right partner. But the last two are the two that I'm always really excited about is, again, the IT staff not having to drive to the physical location. So looking unified admin, single admin, all channels of communication managed in a single pane of glass. But there's cool operational efficiencies there too. So if you're already managing your teachers and administration staff in, say, an Active Directory, setting up what we call user sync, where all those identities are flowing in the system and user grouped with the right license and permissions and settings. So now you don't have to manage it. You're managing it once, and it's all flowing over. So that's the type of scalability that centralized administration can offer. But on the last point, future-proofing, one thing I'm really excited about that's starting to come towards education is a lot of communication companies have had a foot in unified communications and a foot in contact center. And contact center, from your really expensive, high volume inbound call center into more of a unified platform, that's really where we're excited about. And that brings you to your front desk person. Your front desk person has that phone that has 300 keys running to the side of their phone, and they can quickly transfer anywhere. They're your community engagement person. If you call the school, if K through 12, they're the ones that answer. And so if we think about some of these inbound recipients, whether it's the financing department, scholarship department, front desk folks, those are mini call centers. And the cost effectiveness has gotten so great that you can think of them as mini call centers. And so you can give them a call queue that gets to the right person without just ringing a voicemail. You can give them tools to check how quick they're answering and how many calls they're answering and what was the satisfaction of that call. So you can really think of them again like mini call centers, and that's super cool to me that your front office staff can be your community engagement team with the same amount of capacity.
Yeah, I actually have never thought of it like that. That is actually really cool. Also, when you speak of legacy systems, it blows my mind because I think of like my old iPods and stuff, and I'm like, how? Where do you even start? So it does blow my mind how you can integrate them. It really is impressive. Kurt, I'll hand over to you. Do you have anything you'd like to add? I know you've definitely been in the education space a good while.
Long time. Well, I will just say GoTo, our platform, the genesis of our platform goes back to 2010, where education was at the forefront of our priority and our product development. And meeting the needs of schools, campuses, universities was seen and is still seen as a key differentiator of our platform and as a partner to make sure that we're meeting educational needs. Um, we understand the challenges and limitations of educational institutions, and we work closely and partner with those that we serve to assure we get the right fit of products that meet available budget availability. And that's what we do as a partner. We try to help the customer identify what their needs are and how best to put in place a platform that really is robust and really meets all of those needs. And I want to highlight our training. We have a myriad of training tools and opportunities that we really try to train up the customers prior to turning them loose or turning them free to make sure they fully understand the platform and can manage it going forward. Then obviously working with educational institutions on implementation. That is a key element. We work and we understand the best times for schools and universities are through holiday breaks or summer breaks. And we really try to coordinate and partner to make sure we meet those timelines to turn the platform up and have it operational. Uh, and as Adam mentioned about contact center future proofing, you get a license and 2 years down the road, we roll out additional features and functionality on the platform. You get it automatically. You don't have to pay for it. So with that, I'll close and turn it back to Lucia.
Yes, thank you for that, Kurt. I love that. I think we've covered a lot of ground here. I'm going to move on to the next slide, but I'm actually conscious of time. We've been so busy talking about education, I didn't even realize the time. So this is just an overview of educational institutes and what they have to say about their experience with GoTo Connect. But in the interest of time, I think we might just move it on to the Q&A session. Alexis, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. We've had a couple of questions come in. Definitely conscious of everyone's time, so we'll keep it to just a couple of questions here. Alrighty. So first one we have up, we have an old paging system and dozens of analog phones. How does GoTo Connect integrate with older hardware during a transition?
Most paging is pretty okay. You can do an analog to digital converter. Where it becomes less cost effective is on the phones themselves, the physical phones themselves. If they're not, provisionable against, a cloud, VoIP provider, then you would have to replace the phones. So a couple options are, integrating to legacy Bell systems, usually pretty okay. Same thing like fax machines. That's just an analog to digital adapter. And then for the phones, usually, with GoTo Connect size and scale, we can offer phones for, free to discounted depending on, economics and everything. And so usually we recommend kind of replacing those because modern phones will give you, but waiting indicators and visual voicemail and a lot of, more modern stuff at a low cost. But maybe Kurt, if when you see kind of some of those questions come through, how do you typically position us?
Primarily what you just said in terms of the heavily discounted hardware handsets, and then often some of our hardware partners like Poly and Yealink offer free phones. So it just depends on when those are available. But we try to work with the customer. And if they don't have the money for a capital expense for the hardware, we can often, more times than not, we can rent and allow them to rent that phone over a period of time with a $1 buyout at the end.
Great. Let's move on to the next question here. Can you explain how your system handles 911 calls from soft phones?
Yeah, so specifically from soft phones, and this will be also give a mobile app answer, but from the soft phone, we give the end user the opportunity to say, I am here, or I'm not here. So when the admins pop into the admin portal, they're going to configure all the users and devices in locations. And so the user, that's going to be the user. And so the user has the ability to see what the admin provisioned for them, but also has the ability to add additional locations. So if you think about your home or somewhere else, you take your laptop with you, right? It's never in a fixed spot. You can choose where you are, and then when you call 911, you can say, I'm here, or I'm not here. We always make sure that a call gets connected regardless. So for example, even if you don't have a good address, or if it's not provisioned or whatever, and it'll go to what's called the national PSAP. And the national PSAP, excuse me, we'll make sure it answers and then gets the call to the local PSAP. So that call always gets connected, whether it's national or local. But again, we give the user the ability to say, I am here, I am not here, for that reason. And then on the mobile app, it'll fail over to cellular. So they'll have the cellular geocoding stuff that, when you call from Verizon or AT&T, same thing.
Wonderful. And I know we are just at the top of the hour, so I will put one more question in here. What cooperative agreements do you participate in?
The two national cooperative agreements we participate in are the Interlocal Purchasing System, or TIPS, and the E&I Cooperative. Those are national purchasing cooperatives that have very ubiquitous memberships, both of them do. And then we do have some state-specific cooperative agreements. Spur in California, SPURR, for example, is a great cooperative agreement. CES in New Mexico, the Ohio Management Council in Ohio, Region 11 in Texas. Trying to think of what else. I think those are the main ones that, or Allied States Cooperative out of Texas. So we have a myriad of cooperative agreements that we can take advantage of.
Wonderful. And I know we are just at the top of the hour, 2 o'clock Eastern here. So I have a couple of other questions. We'll be sure to reach out and follow up with those. But I just want to thank everyone for joining and thank our fantastic speakers, Lucia, Kurt, and Adam. It's been a great session. And to all of you joining today, we'll be sending out the recording and all the documents you've seen in our handout section.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.